Hello, everyone. I'm Marty Ross, Dr. Marty Ross, and this is another Conversations with Marty Ross MD. It's a webinar where we get to talk about Lyme disease and we get to talk about the things that you want to talk about. So the way that you can participate in this webinar is to actually write questions to me. And the way that you do that is over here on the bottom of your screen, over on the right-hand side, is a chat box. Write your question to me through that. As you're writing it, I know sometimes people want to write and break their things into paragraphs, but the way this chat box works is that you do not want to hit the enter key to create paragraphs. In fact, don't try to create paragraphs. Just write one long ongoing paragraph that has your sentence, because every time that you hit the enter key, it sends a question to me, right? And I want to be able to follow your question, and it's easier if it's all written as one instead of having to hop around on my side of the webinar tonight trying to find the various pieces, all right? So I'd appreciate if you do that. I am creating a recording of tonight's webinar, as I usually do, and you'll be able to have access to that tomorrow morning. I'll edit up the recording tonight to cut out some of the blank spaces that occur sometimes. And then I should have that ready for you tomorrow morning. You'll get an email from me somewhere between 6 and 6:30 a.m., typically Seattle time, that is Pacific Standard Time, telling you that the recording is ready. If for some reason you don't get that email, there's a few other places that you could look for the recording. Number one, you can find it at my supplement store, Marty Ross MD Supplements, on the homepage. It'll be towards the bottom, okay? So Marty Ross MD Supplements. Number two, you could find it on the Treat Lyme website on the webinars page. Just go ahead and go there, scroll there, and you'll see a link to click webinar recordings. You'll see it there, all right? You can also see it on Facebook. I have been posting these recordings up on Facebook at my Facebook /Treat Lyme page. And then finally, it's on my YouTube channel as well, too. So there's a lot of ways that you can see this recording if you happen to miss pieces of it tonight, okay? Let me see. Oh, this is going to be the last webinar for a couple weeks. So we'll do tonight, and then I'm going to be off next week, and then we'll be back at doing this again in May, okay? So I hope that you will join me in May's series, and in tomorrow's email, I will give you a sign-up form that you can sign up to, or I'll give you a link to the sign-up form to sign up to the next series of webinars in May, okay? All right. So that covers all the business side of things here. So let's go ahead and get started here. During the webinar, I will post your questions. So you're going to see the question that I'm responding to written on the screen. I'm going to read it, though, because in the recorded version, it's not always easy to see some of the questions, okay? All right, so let's go ahead and get started here. This first question is from Heidi. Let's see, what is the best way to get rid of Candida? Thank you, also have Lyme. All right. So Heidi, I have an extensive article that you can read about how to get rid of yeast in my Treat Lyme website. And I'll show you that article in a minute because it has all kinds of ideas, okay? But the one that I write about most often, you can also find in my Lyme disease treatment guideline, which I just rewrote, actually. It's a whole brand new version of my treatment protocol called the Ross Lyme Support Protocol. It's a full Lyme disease treatment protocol, and you can find it there. And actually, I tell you what, I'm going to do a quick screen share so I can show that to you so that you can look at it on your own. Then I also will show you where you can look for more ideas too. All right, so I'm going to do a quick screen share here. Okay. And on here, this is basically all my writings about Lyme disease. It's a pretty comprehensive resource. And one of the big writings is this treatment protocol tab, okay? And so I just republished this last Thursday or Friday, I believe, and it's a complete rewrite. For those of you that have seen this before, you'll see some common things, but also there's some brand new areas in here as well too, okay? So this is a protocol that you can use to give your doctor ideas, or you can even use it on your own. It has all of the basic steps that you're going to want to do in a Lyme disease treatment. And so let me scroll down here. So one part that I tell people to do is get sleep, and I give you ideas on how to do that. I talk about what is a good diet to do. There's a section on how you lower cytokines, one on how you be on an adaptogen. But one of the sections is about yeast. And so let me see here. I've rewritten. I'm trying to figure out where it is. That's right. On part 10 is my yeast section of the Ross Lyme support protocol. Okay. And if you look here, there's a part here that says, what do you do to treat active Lyme? And that's this part right here. And so what I recommend for treating active yeast is to use nystatin, it's a prescription, 2 pills 2 times a day, and fluconazole, the prescription fluconazole, also known as diflucan, 200 milligrams 1 time a day. Okay, that's probably the strongest way to get rid of your yeast. You're going to use that diflucan for at least 30 days. The nystatin you may want to use even for a few months after you get the yeast out. Okay. Now you want to couple that together with a probiotic. All right. Another option you could look at would be a natural medicine option. And I mentioned 2 herbs in this section. One is called Phytostan, another product called Capri Plus. These are both herbal combinations that include various herbs that can get rid of yeast. They're going to take about 3 to 4 months to get rid of your yeast versus this nystatin diflucan combination will wind up taking about a month. Okay. All right. Now, if you, so in terms then of other ideas that I have, take a look in the chapter section here. I have a whole chapter I've written on yeast. And within the chapter on yeast, there are some articles about various things you can do. But one of the key articles is this one right here called Kills Yeast, a Brief Guide. And in here, I review all kinds of ways that you can go about killing your yeast. Okay. All right, let me go back here. Information. And everyone who has not seen it yet, take a look at the new Ross Lyme support protocol. And I think you're going to see it's a little bit cleaner. It's got a lot more going on than previous. There's also a couple of documents that you can print out from there. One is a 2-page table that just lists out what are the key supplements to use if you want to do a supplement only or herbal only protocol. And you can print that out. And you can also, I've given a link where you can print out the whole document of the full treatment protocol with explanations about why you're doing what you're doing, what I recommend, and what to take, both herbal and prescriptions. Okay. So take a look at it. It's pretty comprehensive. And I think it would give you, anyone that needs the tools to figure out how to recover from this thing, the steps that you should do to do that. Okay. All right. Good luck to you, Heidi. Thank you for that question. Let's see here. Hello, Sita. Let's see. Hello. How much activated charcoal and for how long do you recommend for someone who had mold exposure and subsequent Lyme symptoms? I'm an adult female, 120 pounds, not on any pharmaceuticals. That's the first part. Second part is, how do you feel about wild oil of oregano? Do you have a favorite recommendation for intermittent frontal headaches? I see where you wrote that in another section here. Okay, so there's 3 questions. Let me try to answer those. So first of all, activated charcoal is something that you can use to bind mold toxins to pull them out of you. You could also use bentonite clay. Those are 2 of my favorite supplements that you can use to remove mold toxins. All right. So why would you want to remove mold toxins? Well, and Sita, you probably know this because you're wanting to treat it, but let me explain it for everyone here. So 25% of people, when they get exposed to mold toxins, are not able to remove them, and they get trapped in you. What happens in 75% of people is if we breathe in mold toxins from our homes or from work or from the environment, our immune system sees those mold toxins and will tag them to be removed. And then the immune system will break them down and they get removed from the body and they don't harm us. But if you happen to be one of those 25%, what happens is those mold toxins don't get tagged. They go to the liver as a fat-based toxin. The liver is supposed to change things that are fat-based into water-based substances. Then they're supposed to get moved out into the intestines, get mixed in our poop and pooped out. Well, that doesn't happen with these mold toxins. What happens to them is they come out of the liver still as a fat-based toxin. They don't get transformed to water-based. They stay a fat-based toxin. And then when they get out into the intestines, they get reabsorbed again back into the bloodstream. They get right back into you again. Now, the trouble with mold toxins is that they cause a severe inflammatory reaction. they trigger white blood cells to make a group of inflammation chemicals called cytokines. And as many of you know that have read my materials or listened to these webinars, Lyme disease also is a cytokine excess syndrome and produces excess cytokines, right? And so both Lyme and mold toxicity issues can look the same. They can look pretty close together. So what are cytokines? Well, cytokines are chemicals made by white blood cells when they see mold toxins, or they see too many yeast in your intestines, or they see parasite infections, or they see Lyme infections, okay? Any kind of infection. And what they're supposed to do is, on the good side, what they do is they cause more white blood cells to be made, they draw white blood cells to where the problem is, and they help those white blood cells work better. However, in conditions for which the immune system doesn't do a good job, like in mold toxicity issues, or in chronic yeast infections, or in chronic Lyme disease, the immune system keeps trying harder and harder and eventually makes too many cytokines. And too many cytokines give you most of the symptoms that look like Lyme disease and look like mold toxicity symptoms, okay? So the too many cytokines disturb your sleep centers, so you can't sleep, make you hurt all over, give you brain dysfunction, make your muscles ache, give you joint pain. They can interfere with correct functioning of your various hormonal systems like the adrenal and thyroid. So you can be a mess from all these extra cytokines, all right? So if you think, so there are various things you can do to figure out if you have mold in your environment. There are even tests you can do to see if you have too many mold toxins in you. I'm not going to go into that now. I'll show you the articles that you can look at later about that. But in terms of removing the mold toxins, one of the things you can do is activated charcoal. At your size, I would try to work up to 500 milligram pill 3 times a day, but I would probably start at 1 pill 1 time a day. After 7 days, if that has not flared you up, I would go to 1 pill twice a day. And in 7 more days, if that has not flared you up, I might work up to 1 pill 3 times a day, okay? You could also do bentonite clay at a similar strength. Depending on which mold toxins are in you, one of those may work better than the other one. If you want to do something that will cover a majority of the various kinds of mold toxins that can cause harm in a person, I would suggest doing a combination of the activated charcoal as well as the bentonite clay. And that would be to do a 500 milligram pill of each, working up to 3 times a day. Okay, those are binders. And I would probably use those for a minimum of about 3 months, maybe even upwards of about 6 months. You have to be careful with your mold toxin binders. When you use them, they sometimes will move the toxins out so aggressively that triggers a cytokine flare. You can get more you can get worse, okay? So the reason I said to start carefully with this and not go right to the 3 times a day is that you need to step into it and make sure that you're not going to flare yourself up badly by doing this, okay? Pharmaceuticals that you can use for this would be something called cholestyramine. Okay, that's another way to do it. I'll show you the full article I have about that here in a second. In terms of wild oil of oregano, oregano is interesting. There's being some work done that has been done that shows that it might be useful against treating persister cells in Lyme disease. Persister cells are cells that occur after you've been on antibiotics for a while. And essentially what happens is the Lyme spirochetes and Lyme cyst slow their metabolism way down and go into hibernation. And when they hibernate, they basically just choose to ignore the antibiotics. And it appears from some Petri dish experiments by Ying Zhang's research group out of Johns Hopkins that oregano might be one of the oils that we can use or substance we can use to help with those persister cells, okay? Now, persister cells are some spirochetes and some cysts that slow their metabolism way down. And also, when germs go into persisters, they tend to want to move into biofilm communities as well, too, okay? I've written a whole article about persister cells that you can take a look at, too, and I'll show you that here in a second as well. There's all kinds of strategies you can use to deal with those. So anyhow, oregano can be useful for Lyme. Oregano can be useful for treating yeast, and oregano might be useful against treating the co-infection Bartonella as well too. So how do I feel about oregano? I like it, actually. I think it could be helpful. In terms of what to do for intermittent frontal headaches, a basic thing that you could do for any kind of headache you get, whether it is intermittent frontal headaches, whether it's migraine headaches, one of the foundations of managing headaches is to try to prevent them, and that is to use magnesium. So you can use different kinds of magnesium. My preference is to use magnesium citrate mixed with magnesium malate. Thorne happens to make a product called magnesium citramate that is both of those, and that's citramate spelled with a C. It's CITRAMATE. But you want to take somewhere around 400 to 600 milligrams at bedtime. That's going to make you sleepy. That's why I take it at bedtime. If you start taking a little bit too much, you'll notice you get loose stools, okay? Because magnesium can loosen your stools. But if you're on magnesium for a while, it actually can help prevent headaches, okay? So it's more of a preventive. I don't really have a good breaker for when they happen, though, intermittently. But there's things you can do to prevent them, which is that magnesium, okay? All right. So let me do a quick screen share here. I'm going to show you a couple of things that treat Lyme. And in terms of articles that you may want to take a look at, look in the detoxification chapter. And in the detoxification chapter, you'll find the whole article I've written about Lyme and mold toxin illness. It goes into much more depth about this illness than what I just described to you, and describes in some detail, depending on how you figure out which mold toxins might be in you, what's the best test, and depending on which ones you actually do have in you, what are the best binders, either charcoal or bentonite clay or other binders to use to get rid of those. Okay, so take a look at that. Let's see here. Oh, the other thing, that's right. In terms of, yeah, here we go. There is actually, yeah, we'll start here. So I mentioned about persister Lyme earlier. So I've written a whole article on that. It's called How to Treat Persister Lyme, What Works, okay? So you may want to take a look at this. In here it describes what those persister cells are and the various things you can do to take a look at that, okay? You can find this in the chapter, Can't Get Better, Do This. It's an alternative. I think you can also find it in my infection treatment plans. Let me see if I threw it in that chapter too. Yeah, there it is. So I was go look at that. That gives you information about how to deal with persister Lyme. Okay. All right, Sita, good luck to you. Thank you for those questions. Hello, Tom. Let's see, Dr. Ross. I have Lyme along with a lot of chronic lower gut issues. Not sure if this is due to Lyme, Candida, parasites, or Bartonella. Would Biocidin be a good broad spectrum product that would help, and which version would be the best? Also, could Biocidin be taken with Cemento and Banderol? Okay. So Biocidin, everyone, is an herbal compound. It has a number of things in it, and it happens to come in a pill form, a liquid drop form, and something called Biocidin LSF, which is a liposomal form that comes in a little pump bottle. Liposomal means it's microscopically wrapped in fat, okay? All right. So Biocidin has about 10 different herbs in it, and the primary ones are that can be useful against yeast are garlic and tea tree oil. For parasites, it's got some black walnut in it. And then it also has oregano oil, lavender oil. Those also can treat yeast, but those are also useful for Lyme. And the garlic is also useful for Lyme in there too. Garlic may even be useful against parasites as well. The raspberry that's in it is useful at helping block a Lyme defense mechanism where Lyme has the ability to develop pumps that literally will pump antibiotics back out of the inside of the germ once they get in. And that's herbal and prescription antibiotics. Lyme has the ability to remove them, okay? So Biocidin can help with that. I like using Biocidin in Lyme because there's Petri dish experiments that show that it blocks these pumps that I was just telling you about. It kills all three forms of the Lyme germ. So it kills spirochete Lyme, intracellular Lyme, cyst Lyme. For those of you that are new to these webinars, just be aware Lyme lives in you in three ways. And so you have to kill all three forms of it. The spirochete is the corkscrew-looking thing that many of you may be aware of. You see that online when you look at pictures. There's also a form that lives inside of cells, and there's the microscopic cyst form. Biocide can take care of that. Biocide also, according to Petri dish experiments, does a good job of removing a slime layer that can cover Lyme germs called biofilms. Biofilms can limit the ability for antibiotics to get at the germ, but also block out your immune system too. All right, so I like it for Lyme. The black walnut and garlic in there means that it can probably handle parasites, or it can handle parasites. And then it has a combination that's useful, at least on Petri dish experiments, and from what I've seen clinically, it's useful for yeast. It also can be used to treat something called small intestinal bowel overgrowth or bacterial overgrowth, and small intestine bacterial overgrowth, also known as SIBO. This has been shown in some experiments to be useful at treating for that condition as well too. Okay. Which form would I use? If you're trying to address more GI issues, I would use the liquid drop, or I would use the pill. Probably the drop, but if you can't do liquid drops, then the pill form would be an alternative. I don't think you need to use the Biocidin LSF, the liposomal variety. That's probably going to be better for Lyme that's in the central nervous system. But if you're trying to use things that are going to stay more in the gut and help there, I would do the pills or the drops. My preference would be the drops. I think they may be a little bit stronger. In terms of how you use it, I would start with the Biocidin drops. You want to work up to 10 drops 3 times a day. If you're extremely medicine sensitive, I would start at 1 drop 3 times a day. But if you're a person that can tolerate things and doesn't get bad Herxheimer reactions, then what you might do is start at 2 or 3 drops 3 times a day, and every day increase by 1 drop per dose until you reach the 3 drops 10 times a day. Okay, so that's how I might go about doing it. And good luck with you. Good luck to you with that. Okay, all right. So if anyone's wondering about Biocidin, and actually this is one of those articles that I have available for free at Treat Lyme. Look here under my free read section. And so the article on Biocidin is here. This is where I review the science and tell you specifically, depending on which form you're going to use, how to go about using it, which situations you might want to use it in as well too. Okay, so that's the Biocidin. Let's see here. Hello, Kim. Let's see. Hi, Dr. Ross. Thanks for doing these webinars. You're welcome. They are so informative. Would like to hear your thoughts on chronic inflammatory response and the use of cholestyramine and VIP spray. Do you feel this helps patients eventually become less reactive? Will low MSH and cortisol restore with treatment? Okay. So chronic inflammatory response syndrome, or CIRS, C-I-R-S, is a term and condition developed and explained by and taught by Dr. Richie Shoemaker. Shoemaker is a family doc out in the shores of Chesapeake Bay, Maryland, out in Pocomoke, Maryland. And he discovered years ago, when he was trying to treat his townspeople that had a toxin poisoning from swimming in the bay, that had developed bad diarrhea, and trying to help those people with bad diarrhea, he discovered that if he put patients on cholestyramine, which he was using to stop their diarrhea because it's a side effect, it can constipate you, he discovered that, guess what? A lot of those patients that had chronic fatigue syndrome and fibromyalgia started having their symptoms get better. And it started making him wonder, why? What's this about? And so over time, he developed this whole elaborate theory that shows that around 25% of all people, when we breathe in or drink in mold toxins, cannot get them out. Okay. What cholestyramine is it's a fat binder that binds up those mold toxins once they get moved out into the intestines and keeps them from getting reabsorbed. So what Shoemaker decided, what he's done over time, he developed this whole theory and a bunch of tests you can do to see if you might have chronic inflammation. And the first step in his theory is to first determine, do you have a genetic predisposition to be a person who can't remove mold? And if you happen to have too much mold in you, the first step at decreasing inflammation is get the mold out. The second step in his theory is, if that doesn't get you better and you got your mold out, Then the next place you look for a source for chronic inflammation is to see if you might have an infection from something called MARCoNS, which is methicillin-resistant coagulase negative staph. That's what MARCoN stands for. And if you happen to have a culture from doing a nose swab that shows that you have MARCoNS, then he thinks that you should treat MARCoNS with a nose spray called the BEG nose spray, BEG, and also with oral antibiotics, primarily rifampin. And then if that gets taken care of and you still have inflammation, then you're supposed to do a bunch of other blood tests to see if there's other types of inflammation going on. Now, I'll tell you about that in a minute. But the one thing about MARCoNS that I have found is it's practically impossible to get rid of. And in fact, even Shoemaker would admit that in private as well, too. So I also have found, even when I was able to get rid of it, that it would often come back again, and that generally people don't get benefit out of removing it. So I'm not a big believer in Shoemaker's theory of MARCoNS and trying to get rid of it, okay? Now, what happens is if you clear inflammation first from yeast, and then you clear inflammation from MARCoNS, and a person is still ill, then you're supposed to do a bunch of blood studies to see what other kinds of inflammation might go on. One of those is to do a blood study called TGF-beta1. There's another study you can do looking at MSH. There's another study you can do looking at a chemical called VEGF. And depending on which of those inflammatory chemicals is elevated, there are certain steps that Shoemaker recommends that you take. Now, I have found that those other additional steps, when somebody has Lyme, generally don't make a difference. And I think the problem is even though Shoemaker is not a big believer in chronic Lyme, he doesn't believe it. He thinks that people stay inflamed, not from chronic Lyme, but because of these additional inflammation steps that need to be taken, okay? But what I think happens in the world of Lyme is that if somebody has Lyme, the reason they keep staying inflamed with these other various tests showing inflammation, like the VEGF and the TG-beta1 and low MSH, the reason those chemicals still keep coming back abnormal and that they're off is because chronic Lyme is leading to that kind of inflammation. So I strongly disagree with Shoemaker. I think his theory works well for people that have pure mold toxicity issues that sets up chronic ongoing inflammation. But when you throw Lyme into the mix, I think his theory breaks down. I think the most useful thing you can do for his theory if you have Lyme is his theory was great at showing that people can be chronically inflamed from having mold. I think that's really appropriate to deal with that. The additional steps in his theory regarding do they give you any improvement in Lyme disease, I generally find that they do not, and therefore I do not do most of his protocol anymore. I have even used the VIP spray and I haven't found it to be helpful either, okay? So if Lyme is in the picture, I don't think his theory works, basically. All right? Sorry about that. All right. Thank you for that question. All right. Let's see. Sorry, I've got my two dogs are here with me tonight, and I've got people out on the side of my building that are looking in the windows and talking to them. So I was just trying to figure out what was going on there. Many of you may have seen them. They're two black flashes that may jump around behind me. I have a couple Basenjis that I bring in here, so if you happen to see them, we're just looking to see what was going on over there. Let's see. Hello, Marie E. Let's see. Hi. Thanks for so much for these webinars. You're welcome. I read your articles on mold illness, biofilms, and biocidin. I was wondering if biocidin can treat mold in sinuses and the intestines and get rid of the mold biofilms too. So, Marie, I haven't used it or tried it for that purpose before, so I'm not able to tell you if it would work. However, I do not think it would work. I don't think it would work well enough to get at the sinuses. To treat the sinuses, you're going to need to use some kind of a antifungal nose spray, whether you're using amphotericin nose spray, or you're going to use nystatin nose spray, or you're going to use itraconazole or diflucan nose sprays. You need to use some kind of a nose spray. So I don't, and if you were to try to even drop in biocidin, boy, I think it would really burn pretty badly because of the oils that are in there. I think it'd give you a strong burning sensation. So I don't know that it would work. I'm doubtful it would work in an oral form. and that you would still need to use something that has to get at the nose, the infection up in the nose. Now, could it break down mold biofilms within the intestines? I don't know. No research has been done about that. It has broken down yeast biofilms, but I don't know that it would break down mold biofilms. So the answer is I don't know. The work hasn't been done to look at that question. All right. Thank you for that question. Hello, Christine. Let's see. Thank you for giving us new information each webinar. You're welcome. About cholestyramine, how much is a scoop of cholestyramine in teaspoons? And if I am also taking charcoal clay and chlorella and glutathione, will I get the same amount of inflammation in the joints as from treating tick-borne illnesses? So I'm going to have to reread this, but to answer your question, I don't know how many teaspoons a scoop is. What I would do is take a scoop out, pour it in a teaspoon, and see. I just have never measured it before, so I'm not quite clear about that. Okay. Let's see. If I am also, will I get the same amount of inflammation in the joints as from treating tick-borne illnesses? I think what you're asking is if you're binding up your mold toxins with these various binders, will that potentially lead to the same kind of inflammation that you might get in your joints as you might get with a die-off reaction, for instance? It could. So again, when you start moving mold toxins out of the body by binding them in the intestines, that leads to movement of the remaining mold toxins that are in you within your bloodstream. And that movement of those mold toxins in you triggers a cytokine flare. And remember, a Herxheimer reaction, whenever you kill Lyme germs and you get a Herx reaction, what that is that the immune system sees the dead bug parts and the toxins that get released from the inside and reacts by making more cytokines. So a Herxheimer reaction is a cytokine flare, giving you pain throughout various parts of your body, including joint pains and joint inflammation. Same thing can happen when you start moving mold toxins. They also trigger a cytokine flare, which could show up as pain in various parts of your body as well, too. Okay, I think that's what you're asking with your question. Let me see. Yeah. Let's see if there's a second part here. Nope, I think that's it. Okay. Christine, thank you for that question. I hope that answers it for you, too. And good luck to you. All right. Hello, Judy. Let's see. Some have said that they take olive leaf with the biocidin to make it more effective. Is this true? A big shout out to you for sharing your wealth of info with all of us so freely. We appreciate you. I know your days are already long. Yeah, they are at times, but no, I enjoy doing these. I actually get energized going through these. I think some of you see towards the end I kind of tire out, and sometimes I may even abbreviate them a little bit, but thank you. I appreciate that. I enjoy helping people. This is just another way that I can go about doing it. In terms of adding olive leaf into this, I don't know. I haven't done it that way before. So the benefits of olive leaf is that it can be an immune system stimulant. It can turn on white blood cells. But it's probably better value is that it is a good virus killer. And that tends to be what I use it for in my practice. As to whether it's going to help with and biocidin in any fashion to help with the treatment of Lyme or yeast, I'm not clear. I don't know that, Judy. I haven't used it that way, and I'm not clear about that. Thank you. Thanks for that question. And thanks for your kind words, too. I appreciate that. Hello, Laura. Let's see, Dr. Ross. I recently received my mycotoxin test back from Real-Time Labs. The only thing that showed up was an equivocal result for aflatoxins. What does this mean? Does it mean there are some present and I should go ahead and treat this before Lyme? Could more mycotoxins show later into treatment? So what I have found, so Real-Time Labs, everyone, is a lab that I use and many of my colleagues use to see if you actually have excess mold toxins in you. All right. And it's a urine test, and they report on 4 families of mold toxins. So when you get a report back, they're going to tell you whether you have elevations in trichocethine, which is black mold toxin, aflatoxins, gliotoxins, and ochratoxins. Now, do you notice I'm using the letter S on all of those? It's because it's reporting on the family of those, okay? All right, and these are all toxins that are going to occur from mold and sick buildings, basically, and these are the ones that give you are produced by mold in buildings that have mold problems. All right. Now, I don't follow the Shoemaker protocol. What Shoemaker doesn't like using this lab. He doesn't believe in doing these labs. What Shoemaker likes to do is and I mentioned Shoemaker earlier tonight, but Shoemaker likes to see if you have a genetic predisposition for this problem by doing a genetic test to see, are you one of the 25% of people that might have the problem removing mold toxins? And if you are, then he would say, use the binders. But I think a better way, because I have found even if you have a genetic predisposition, it doesn't mean you have the problem. I have also found people that don't have his genetic predisposition, that if I remove mold toxins, because I think they have it based on their clinical history, get better. So I don't think his genetic profile test that he would have you do as part of his protocol works. I like to go right to the source. I like to see, do you have too many in you? And I have found the best way to do that is to use the real-time lab. Okay. Now, when you get a real-time lab report, they're going to report back whether you have a true elevation, whether you have something that's totally in normal range, or whether you have something that's in between. All right. And what I have found is benefit for treating those that are true elevations, not those that are small elevate or equivocal, meaning not fully positive. Not quite in the normal range, but just a little bit elevated, but not enough to say it's fully elevated, okay? So equivocal results, I generally don't treat because I have not found it beneficial. All right? That's what I would share with you on that. Okay. Good luck to you, Laura. Thank you for that question. Hello, Michelle. Let's see. What helps with cognitive issues and what would help with energy? So let me start with, okay, so in terms of helping with energy, you want to follow some of the basic steps that I recommend within the treatment guidelines. And so I'm just going to go ahead and show that to you here. Let's go ahead and look at that together. So my treatment guidelines contain essential steps that you want to do in any Lyme disease treatment, okay? And I don't know, remember tonight earlier when I was showing you this, everyone, I said there's a table you can get that gives you the key herbs. You would find that right here. It's in this print or download section. And so, for instance, there's the version that I have is something called the Earth version is what I'm calling this. And it includes a table where it tells you the things to use for sleep, which herbs to use for cytokine control, adaptogens, adrenal and thyroid support, multivitamins, detox, etc. Okay, it's 2 pages. It's kind of the Ross protocol, very abbreviated in a more user-friendly way. Okay, so you may want to take a look at that. Okay. That's something you can keep with you, or you can literally print off this whole protocol if you click on this universe version here. All right, but let me just show you parts of this here. So the key things that would help with energy are, number 1, get sleep. Make sure you're getting 7 to 9 hours of sleep. Okay, that's part 1 of my protocol. I give you some herbal options and prescription options here. Okay. Number 2, I like having people on a paleo diet. Paleo diets are useful for creating energy and helping your mitochondria energy factories work better. They tend to have less chance of leading to too many yeast as well too. So you may want to take a look at the recommendations there. Number 3, lower cytokines. Remember I said in Lyme disease, it's a syndrome of too many cytokines. Your immune system creates too many cytokines. And so excess cytokines cause low energy too. You want to lower those. So use the curcumin that I recommend here. Okay. Number 4, help your body deal with stress and give it more energy. And what happens to do that best is this herb called ashwagandha. All right. Number 5, correct hormonal problems. And I tell you how to do that here. Number 6, be on a good multivitamin, and I described that here. And number 8, make sure you're doing good detoxification. Okay, so those are all things that are designed to help your energy. Okay, do those steps. Those are, although in the treatment guideline, I don't have a step that says boost energy. Those are all designed to help boost your energy and also to improve your immune system function as well. Okay, all right, now. The other thing that you could do, let me get back so I can see you here. Steps are designed to do a lot of things in terms of helping you improve Lyme, but they all work together also to boost your energy. So that's one thing you want to do. Okay, second thing that you want to look at is working. If you and the other thing is then treat your Lyme, treat your co-infections. Okay, but let's say you've been treating with herbal or prescription antibiotics and doing all of those other steps that I just told you, and you're about 6 to 9 months into treatment, and you still have low energy. And also, if you have ongoing thinking problems, then the next step is to do things to repair the covering of your mitochondria and to repair the covering of your nerve cells. And what I like to do that does that is something called NT factor. Okay, so every one of your cells has an energy factory system that are called mitochondria. It's what the cells use to create their own energy. And by some estimates, there's about 300 to 400 mitochondria in a cell. When you have chronic infection, there is an overproducing of oxidizing agents in the body. And those oxidizing agents damage fat membranes. In particular, they damage the fat membranes of your nerve cells, which is why you get into some of the thinking problems, part of the reason you have thinking problems, okay? But they also damage the fat membranes that make up the mitochondria energy factories, all right? And so if you are doing things to fix Lyme and you're still having problems, then sometimes we need to go in and actually repair the nerve cell membrane and repair the mitochondria covering. And what does that is the NT factor. NT factor energy has in it the fats that make up the covering of the mitochondria and the covering of your nerve cell membranes. And I usually have people do 2 pills of that 3 times a day for 2 months. Then after 2 months, you decrease it down to 1 pill 3 times a day. You do that for about 4 more months, okay? Keep in mind, if you give your nerve cells more energy by fixing your mitochondria, they're going to work better and you're going to think better, okay? And also that NT factor repairs the covering, all right? Second thing you want to do is be on glutathione. Now, as part of my detox regimen in what I just showed you, you would be on glutathione. But glutathione is the master detox reparative antioxidant that is made in every cell. It's used by the liver to detox, but it's used by every other cell to repair itself, right? So if you want to repair your thinking, the cells involved in thinking, get on glutathione. It repairs them from the inside versus NT factors repairing those cells from the outside, okay? And you would want to do 5 milliliters of that Trifortify, either the Trifortify orange or Trifortify watermelon flavor, 1 time a day. The other thing I would get on is coenzyme Q10. CoQ10 is used inside mitochondria to carry electrons to a bunch of the chemical reactions. And often people will be deficient in that, and you need that to help with mitochondria and even nerve function too. And that's 400 milligrams 2 times a day. Now, a word about my coenzyme Q10. You do not want to be on it if you're on atovaquone, which is found in Malarone or Mepron, something we use to treat babesia. It interferes with the atovaquone function and treating babesia, so you don't want to be on it then, okay? And then finally, if you happen to be a person that doesn't eat red meat at least once a week, you want to supplement something called acetyl L-carnitine. Carnitine is a protein found in red meat, and it's used it's also then embedded in the covering of the mitochondria energy factories. And it's used in the covering of the mitochondria energy factories to actually transport fat to the inside of the mitochondria. And if you don't get enough through having red meat, then you need to replace it, okay? And usually what I'll do is start a person at 500 milligrams twice a day for a month. And after a month, then I would decrease it to 1 pill a day after that, okay? All right. And a product I like for that, I use a product made by Thorne in my practice called Carnitil. That has 500 milligrams of the acetyl L-carnitine in it, okay? So first of all, what I would do is do the basic steps of the Ross Lyme treatment protocol that I showed you earlier, okay? And if after about 6 to 9 months that's not helping, then you would go forward and do more of my mitochondria and nerve repair formula of being on NT factor, glutathione, coenzyme Q10, and possibly, if you're not a red meat eater, being on acetyl L-carnitine. All right, so those are my thoughts on that. Let me just do a quick screen share here because I'll show you where you can read this a little bit more later too. The chapter, and let's look at the chapter called Energy and Fatigue. All right, and take a look for this discussion I just had with you. Take a look at this article called Power Up, Energy and Mitochondria, okay? Or another article I've written that has very similar content would be to take a look at the article called Brain and Nerves. And that would be this article called Brain Fog and Lyme Disease, You Can Fix It, okay? And it has a similar content to that energy article that I just showed you. All right? All right. Let me go back here. Question, Michelle. Good luck to you. Hello, Marnie. Let's see. Hi, Dr. Ross. Thanks for offering these webinars. You're welcome. Let's see. After Lyme treatment starting 4 years ago, I am undergoing treatment for Candida. All along, I've had a lot of burning leg pain, specifically in my calves, except when treated for BART. Do you have any recommendations for treating this? I assume by this you mean the burning leg pain. So burning leg pain is often a neuropathy or nerve injury type pain. So I would work towards fixing the nerves, okay? And it's actually the same formula that I just gave you for fixing mitochondria and fixing poor thinking, which is do that NT factor that I mentioned. Also be on glutathione, which fixes nerve injury from the inside. Be on coenzyme Q10. And then also, if you're not a meat eater, be on that acetyl L-carnitine, okay? Now, I have written it down in an article directed at peripheral neuropathy. If you want to see how I organize it regarding that, let me just do a quick screen share here. And take a look at this article called Neuropathy Repair, Heal That Tingling, Numbness, and Pain, okay? Now, the other thing you might want to take a look at that can help more directly with the pain while you're trying to fix your nerves is take a look at my article on medical marijuana. Medical marijuana is very useful in treating nerve pain. In fact, there's some science that does support the use of it in treating nerve pain, and that would be something for you to consider looking at as well, too. Okay? All right. Let me go back here. So marijuana, there are a number of active chemicals within marijuana. One of the big ones is THC. That's the chemical that gives you the drug high. And then there's another major group of chemicals called CBD. There's even other chemicals in there too. But the two main ones that have some medical activity would be THC and CBD. CBD is what gives you the high. And it probably is better taken at night because it can help give you some sleep, and it can be sedating too, all right? CBD is something that's better to take a predominantly CBD product in the daytime because CBD tends to be a little bit more upping and tends not to give you the whole high portion of things as well too, okay? Now, a starting dose for CBD, if you're going to do something that is an edible or pill form, is 5 milligrams twice a day. And THC, if you're going to do a pill form at night, would be 5 milligrams. That's where you start, okay? Everybody has different susceptibilities and ability to handle or not handle CBD or THC. And so it's by trial and error that you learn what is a dose you can handle. Now, edibles and pill forms tend to take about 2 hours to reach their full effect. And then they'll last maybe 6 hours, maybe up to 14 hours, okay? Inhaled CBD or THC, whether it is you're smoking or you're using a vaporizer or using oils that are vaporized, the advantage of those is that you know pretty quickly the effect of your dose. Within about 30 seconds, you're going to start having some effect, and that effect can become maximum in about 30 minutes. Okay, so it's an easier way to regulate your dose. The thing about those varieties, though, is they tend to get out and be wearing out of your body, I think around 4 hours or 5 hours later. So they tend to be shorter acting. Okay. But anyhow, I explain all of that in my CBD THC article. Take a look at it, and you'll see that there's even science in there that are referred to that shows that it can be helpful specifically in neuropathies as well too. Okay. All right. Good luck to you, Marty. Hello, B. Let's see, Dr. Marty, FYI, when you share your screen to demo your articles, we cannot hear you during the transition. B, yeah, I know that, unfortunately. There's no perfect webinar platform. What I probably ought to start doing is until my screen, and I am aware of that, I guess I should modify what I do because of that. I think once I do the screen share, I need to stop talking until I see that it's gone live again. Okay, so I'll keep that in mind in the future. All right. Thank you. Thank you for bringing that to my attention. Hello, GD, or Judy. I think I said GD. Judy, I love your Treat Lyme book and like up for a lifetime subscription. It's worth the very reasonable price. Thanks for that. Oh, thank you. I appreciate that. I think it's a good resource. I don't think that it's well known yet. I'm just looking at the number of people that actually subscribe. But I think I've tried to do a good job of writing a resource that's very practical on how to. So I know there's other Lyme disease books out there. I know Horowitz, for instance, has his, but I think Horowitz is just too deep and too heady. It's not practical. It doesn't give you the what to do and why you do it briefly and quickly. And I've tried to err on the side of doing that. Sometimes I know I can be a little long-winded, but I try to keep the explanations to the essential things so that you have information that you can use and use it pretty quickly. So I'm glad. Thank you for making that comment. I appreciate that. And spread the word. I appreciate. I want to help as many people as possible. And I think it's a very underutilized resource at this time. And part of that is I need to reorganize the website. And I think many of you know, I've mentioned before, I've hired a company to redo the website. And so that process is underway. But it's a lot more involved process than I realize. It's taking some time. The current website I maintain all myself. I do on a platform called WordPress, but it has its limitations. But working with this new design firm, it's already been, I think, about a month and a half. We may even be another month before the new site's ready to launch. But I hope when it does launch, I think you're going to find it to be a better functioning site. And organized in a more useful fashion as well, too. All right. Thank you for that comment, Judy. Hello, Susan. Let's see. Disabled from Lyme since 1999. Treated with massive antibiotics, antimalarials, etc., but only got worse. 2011 got messed, got frantic with first bite of food, goes on for hours. Or gut messed. Makes me in the night on severe diet, but no better. Bart possibly last year, never treated it. What can I do to treat without ruining my gut further? Oh boy, Susan, that's complex for me to answer, especially given the various things you've been through. And to do this justice, I need to ask you a lot of questions. I'm not going to be able to give you an answer tonight, unfortunately, because I don't know enough about you and exactly what it is that's setting your gut off, what is your overall health like, etc. One thing you could take a look at, That service that I offer is to get more one-on-one care where I can actually ask questions and have a better way of tailoring a response for you, would be to take a look at my online consult service where you can visit me online and we see each other. I get to talk with you. And after I do that, then I write up a visit note that you can then use for your own, or you can share with your physician. If there happen to be some things that require prescriptions on there, you can share it with them. It's a doctor's visit note. And so that may be one thing for you to think about doing. Let me just show everyone how you would go about doing that. Take a look at my online consult page. And I would ask, if you're going to think about doing this, read the whole thing to make sure this is really right for you. So before you even call us or email my receptionist, set up an appointment, read the full page so you can see how this process works, okay? So there's one drawback to doing the consult, and that is because I have not seen you in person, I'm not able to prescribe. So you would need to find another physician to prescribe if there are prescriptions, okay? And I cannot order tests. So if I suggest testing, you would have to have a physician that can do that for you as well too, okay? That's because my medical board doesn't allow me to do those things unless I have first seen somebody in person and done an exam on them, okay? All right. But you may take a look at that. Anyone could do that. That service is open for anyone. It's a way to get more direct information out of me. Okay? All right. Good luck to you, Susan. Hello, Maria. Let's see. I would like to know to tell the difference between me and psychiatric manifestations of Lyme. My doctor told me I have no reference point for myself. For 1 week, I was free of psych symptoms, same as when I used to go to the sun and ocean. But as soon as the cold comes in, I'm crazy, angry, and scared. Huh. Maria, that's it's a complicated question. So it is true that Lyme and Bartonella both are known for giving psychiatric symptoms, and those symptoms can be things like depression and anxiety, anger, rage. You can have hallucinations sometimes, severe cognitive impairment. The whole range of psychiatric issues can be triggered by Lyme and or Bartonella. In fact, when somebody has a lot of psychiatric symptoms, I'm going to consider, and probably will treat for Bartonella. And even if Bartonella testing is negative, I would treat, because we estimate there's 30 strains. We think there's anywhere from 15 to 19 human strains, but there are 30 strains overall. We can only really test well for 2. So if somebody's got a lot of neuropsych stuff going on, like severe cognition and psychiatric illnesses like anxiety, depression, etc., we're going to want to treat for both Lyme and Bartonella, okay? Now, the one thing I will tell you is that when you have ongoing psychiatric manifestations of Lyme, they tend not to come and go. My experience, and that's Bartonella too, my experience says that they're pretty much around all the time. You may have a little bit of worsening and decrease in the amount of depression or the anxiety or the anger or the rage or the hallucinations, but they're not going to come and have really good days all of a sudden followed by really bad days, okay? So my experience says that if it is Lyme or Bartonella, consider they're probably going to be more ongoing, pretty persistent symptoms. Would be a big distinction that I would point out, okay? And I hope that's enough to answer your question, but those are my thoughts on that. Okay, thank you. Let's see. Hi, B. Let's see. Told recently that if one's blood is positive for mold, those people with continued exposure in their environment do not get well from Lyme and co-infections. Let's see. And with treating mold, is charcoal and bentonite clay important to use along with cholestyramine? All right. So, if you have ongoing mold in you, again, mold toxins trigger cytokine excess, okay? And cytokine excess gives you a lot of the Lyme symptoms, but also those excess cytokines suppress the immune system. So if you have ongoing mold exposure and you're not able to remove it in a way that lowers the levels in you, yes, it could make it hard to get over Lyme. I agree with that. However, it's hard to move out of our mold environment sometimes. So sometimes what you can do is take enough cholestyramine that you at first lower the total amount of mold that has gotten trapped in you, and then you keep taking it on an ongoing basis to keep up with the insults that you keep getting from your environment, okay? So that could look like, for instance, working up to doing cholestyramine, 1 scoop, 3 times a day for a good 2 months or so to lower the swimming pool of toxins that are in you, and then reducing it down to once or twice a day to keep up with the insults that keep coming at you from your environment, all right? And if you could do something like that, you can still recover. But if you are not able to find a level of cholestyramine you can take that keeps up with what's coming at you, or other binders like charcoal or bentonite clay that keep up with what's coming at you, yeah, I agree. It may be hard to get over your whole Lyme disease, okay? In terms of your second part of your question here, which is, let's see, is charcoal and bentonite clay important to use along cholestyramine? You know, I like cholestyramine is probably a pretty good general overall, covers most mold toxin binder, all right? If you happen to have gliotoxin, I tend to find bentonite clay to be a little bit better. But generally, if it's not gliotoxin you're dealing with, you're probably okay just using cholestyramine by itself, okay? All right. Thanks for the question, Pete. Hello, Amanda. Let's see here. Dr. Ross, love these sessions. Thank you. You're welcome. This is a 2-part question. First, have you seen peptide therapy be effective for inflammation coming from Lyme and mold toxins? Second part, why does Lyme love the neck, shoulders, and spine? I feel like I have a 50-pound brick on the same area. How do we get symptom relief? It's miserable. All right, let me go back here. So peptide therapy is something that I believe you're talking IV infusions of peptides is something that can be used to boost the immune system and potentially then help with Lyme symptoms. I do not have enough experience with it to know if it does or does not work. I know that Kent Holtorf, I believe, down in California, has been doing quite a bit of work with this in his practice. He's done some public teaching speaking about benefit, but I'm just not clear about that myself. And then in terms of the why does this things tend to focus on the neck, shoulders, and spine? Good question. I don't know why it so focuses there. I know with an overwhelming number of my patients, that's where they tend to get the symptoms as well too. But I can't tell you why that occurs. All right. Sorry about that, Amanda. I don't think I'm a good responder for you tonight here. Good luck to you. Hello, Margaret. Let's see. Why might a person become severely constipated after taking Alinea or Parazomin, which goes after both parasites and bacteria? Does this mean the person needs a parasite cleanse? It doesn't necessarily mean you need a parasite cleanse. What I would say is, although I use Alinea, I haven't used the Parazomin before. Alinea, I have found occasionally to be constipating as a side effect, and I don't think that's what happens in the majority of people, but I have seen that occur periodically. So any medication you take can give any side effect, okay? Or there's the Marty Ross rule of medicine, which is anything can happen to anyone with anything, right? So side effects, there's the common side effects, and then there's the things that happen even if they're not the common side effects. And every one of us is very uniquely different in terms of our biochemistry, chemical reactions, etc. So anything can happen. So Probably this is a side effect. The constipation was a side effect of taking those. Okay. No. And I don't think they necessarily need a parasite cleanse then. All right. Good luck to you, Margaret. All right. Hold on here a minute, everyone. Hello, Greg. Let's see. Hi, Doc. I am just over 2 months into a pharmaceutical and natural-based treatment for Lyme, Babesia, and Bartonella. My question is about how many days per month is Lyme available to be killed? My naturopath is telling me that the bacteria is only vulnerable 1 or 2 days per month. Is this true? No, I disagree. I don't. There's no studies that show that either. I mean, there's. So what she could be referring to is some petri dish experiments that have been done that got published a couple months ago, or I'm sorry, a couple of years ago, over 2 years ago now. They were published out of Northeastern University in Boston. And in these experiments, they grew Lyme on a petri dish, and then they exposed it to one type of antibiotic called ceftriaxone. And they looked to see what would happen. And what they found is that after a small period of time, and I don't know that it was 2 days, but it was a small period of time, that about 20% of the spirochetes and about 20% of the cyst turned into what are called persister forms. And persister cells, or persister spirochetes and persister cyst, basically are forms of the germs that go into hibernation and stop responding to the antibiotics, okay? Now, that was about 20%. It wasn't all of them, it was 20%, all right? So because of that, a number of my colleagues decided that the way to handle this situation is to start pulsing antibiotics, all right? And that would be to do starting and stopping. And in fact, on those petri dish experiments, they did start and stop. They would stop antibiotics long enough for the germs to go back into a growth form and then start them again. And they found that by starting and stopping 4 times, they were able to completely wipe out all the germ forms, all right? Now, there has been some subsequent research done that says that even if persisters develop, that actually it's better to use continuous antibiotics. So there's other research that says otherwise, which is with the correct antibiotics, using the antibiotics continuously, you actually get a better kill than starting and stopping as your naturopath wants to do. My experience in managing this is that there are some people that do better if you do short pulsing, which is like take your antibiotics for 4 days and then be off for 3 days, for instance. However, the majority of people I have found do better if you use ongoing antibiotics, actually. Okay? That's just what my experience is. All right. Good luck to you, Greg, and thank you for that question. Hello, Marie E. Let's see. Hi again. I forgot to ask if you find the Great Plains mycotoxin test as useful as the real-time labs. You know, I haven't. I am aware of Great Plains, and I have seen some patients have come to see me that already had those tests ordered by outside doctors, so I am aware of them. You know, I don't know. I haven't used both enough in my practice to know if one is better than the other. I think they both offer valid ways to see if you happen to have mold toxins in you. All right. So that's what I would say. I think they're both valid labs. Okay. All right. Thank you. Hello, Ellie. Let's see. Is it common to have Lyme present in the CNS? The answer is yes. In fact, I think there's been some studies done that have looked at right after an infection, how long after you get your tick bite, how long does it take before Lyme crosses into the brain? And I think it's within 24 hours. I mean, it's within hours or maybe 4 hours. It's actually very quick. So everybody has Lyme in their brain. It's in there. Okay, now, some people have greater manifestations with it being in the brain. And when it gets really bad, we call that neuro-Lyme, okay? But everybody that gets Lyme, it is in the brain. It's already crossed over into the central nervous system. I think the study said by around 4 hours. It's a very short time course that it takes to actually get into the brain tissues, okay, and the central nervous system. Right. Now, keep in mind, if your doctor's tried to do a spinal tap to see if it's in your spinal fluid, spinal fluid is the same fluid that moves around your brain as well. They're connected. Okay. The fluid of the spine is connected to the fluid of the brain. That if doctors try to do a spinal tap to see if you have quote unquote neuro-Lyme, there's been studies done that show that spinal taps only detect Lyme in the spinal fluid when somebody has neuro-Lyme about 50% of the time. All right, so having a negative spinal tap does not exclude having it in the brain tissues. And again, what the studies would suggest is that it crosses over into the brain pretty quickly after you get infected. Okay? All right. Thank you for that question. A second part to your question, Gregsley, she explained that Lyme goes through 3 stages and only the first stage can be killed by antibiotics and herbals. Again, I don't have any idea what she's referring to there. I think I answered your question. I still stand by my previous response to your question. All right. Hello, Mary. Let's see. Dr. Ross, is the Nanotrap Lyme antigen test by Cirrus Nanosciences? How would you rate it? And then you wrote a second question. Sorry, I meant, what do you think of the Nanotrap Lyme antigen test by Cirrus Nanosciences? How accurate do you think it is? And what is your rating? Thank you so much for these webinars. Mary, thank you for that question. So the Nanotrap is a technique that Cirrus has developed to see if you have pieces of Lyme, or they call it Lyme antigens, Lyme proteins in you. And they're specifically, you would basically, I think it's a urine test actually, and you pee out and you see, do you have the Lyme proteins in you? It's a newer test, and to be honest, I'm not using it. Its probably greatest benefit is in acute tick bite settings. And you can use it to see if you might have pieces of Lyme in you, and it would become positive well before your body develops an antibody reaction. And as you know, the common way we test for Lyme is to measure the antibodies, either do an ELISA or Western blot. So in theory, the Cirrus Nanosciences test, the Nanotrap, is supposed to be able to detect those proteins, Lyme proteins in your urine well before you develop an antibody reaction. I don't know how accurate the test is, and the reason is I haven't looked into it. And the reason I haven't looked into it is I don't live in an area where I get a lot of acute Lyme. Most of the patients that I take care of out here are patients that have chronic Lyme. If I do have somebody that gets an acute tick bite, I'm generally just going to go ahead and put them on antibiotics anyhow because of the great risk that one has of getting bad Lyme if it's there. I think if I lived in a Lyme endemic area where I had to deal with the issue of acute Lyme often in my practice, I probably would look more into the Nanotrap. I just don't have the accurate information for you about that. I haven't studied it well enough to know. All right. Thank you, Mary. Let's see. Hello, Mark. Let's see. Once you see or consult a new patient with neuro-Lyme, how often do you recommend follow visits? So if I'm going to be the main person that's going to be giving you advice about your care, I would recommend after a first visit a follow-up in 1 or 2 months, and maybe every 2 to 3 months after that. Okay, that kind of is the schedule I would look at. If, however, I'm giving directions or information that another doctor who understands Lyme is going to manage, you might even look at every 3 to 6 months, for instance. Okay, so it all depends on how much of an involvement you have of another physician helping to manage your care, carrying out and advising based on the recommendations that I have. Okay, all right. Thanks for that question, Mark. Hello, Sandra. Let's see. Thank you, Dr. Ross. Can biocidin be taken with other prescription medications? Also, is there a helpful herb to prevent Lyme from affecting the heart? Thanks. So yes, biocidin can be taken with prescription medications, and I like using it with them sometimes because, as I mentioned earlier tonight, one of the things that biocidin does is it helps block one of Lyme's mechanisms that it uses to avoid antibiotics, and that is specifically Lyme germs have the ability to pump antibiotics back out of the inside once they get in them. All right, and so biocidin can block those efflux pumps, and because it can do that, that means that prescription antibiotics you're on that get inside of cells, the intracellulars, like your tenidazoles, metronidazoles, rifampins, Bactrums, Biaxin, Zithromax, minocycline, tetracycline, doxycycline, all of those are going to tend to have a better effect inside the cells because they're not going to be pumped out as quickly, or they're not going to be pumped out at all. All right. So yes, I like using biocidin that way. Is there a helpful herb to prevent Lyme from affecting the heart? It's a good question. I mean, all of the herbs that kill Lyme, if you're talking about herbal antibiotics, are going to work well, whether it's heart, lung, brain. They're all going to work equally as well as far as I'm concerned, okay, from what I have seen. If you're asking, is there an herb that just is good for heart health? Not that I'm aware of. I would need to think about that a little more. I haven't done anything in that direction before, but I'd have to think about that a little bit more. All right. Thanks for the question, Sandra. Hello, Kay. Let's see. Hi, I'm taking clarithromycin, and it is causing a horrible metallic taste in my mouth. I have read that this indicates a zinc deficiency. Is this true, and what do you advise? Okay, it's actually not a zinc deficiency. It actually just happens to be a side effect that some people have. If it is not tolerable to you, because it's a side effect, right? So it's nothing that it's either going to be there if you happen to be a person that develops that side effect or not. It may be something that if it's bad enough and most bothersome to you, that you might want to talk with your physician to see if they can change it to another intracellular antibiotic like a Zithromax or a tetracycline, doxycycline, or minocycline. Those are all pretty interchangeable. Clarithromycin, azithromycin, which is Zithromax, minocycline, tetracycline, doxycycline, they all relatively do the same thing. Okay, relatively. All right. All right. Thank you for that question. Good luck. Hello, Pamela. See, I got here late and heard you talking about inflammation, so perhaps you talked about this already. I just have inflammation everywhere, and I'm wondering what all I can do to get this simmered down. Is there an inflammation concoction or whatever that will get simmered down? Many things. Okay. So inflammation, Pamela, in Lyme, and aching pain in Lyme is usually caused by Lyme triggering the immune system to make too many inflammation chemicals called cytokines. Okay, and cytokines are good and bad. They turn the immune system on the good side, but in Lyme, the immune system doesn't do a good job, and it often makes too many cytokines. And too many cytokines give you most of your Lyme symptoms, like poor thinking and the pain, low energy, etc. And too many cytokines suppress the immune system. All right. So my favorite thing to do to lower cytokines is to take curcumin, which is a component of turmeric, the seasoning turmeric, and I like using a liposomal variety of it. That means it's microscopically wrapped in fat to increase its absorption. My favorite product to do that, because I think what I've seen, it has more effectiveness than other products, is to use a product by Thorne called Mariva 500. It's a 500 milligram curcumin pill. You would want to do one pill 3 times a day, and if that's not helpful enough, then you want to go up to 2 pills 3 times a day. In addition, to help lower oxidizing agents that are triggering your white blood cells to make those cytokines, I would get on some glutathione. Glutathione is a very powerful antioxidant that is made in every one of our cells, and it's used by the liver to help with detox. And as an antioxidant, it lowers oxidizing agents that trigger white blood cells to make cytokines. And so what you would want to do with that is I like using a product called Trifortify by Research Nutritionals. And I would do 400 to 500 milligrams of that, which is 5 milliliters one time a day. And if that doesn't work well enough, then the next thing I would add to those two is actually, if that doesn't work, then you might want to talk to your doctor about looking at a prescription medicine called low-dose naltrexone. So naltrexone is a narcotic blocker that blocks a group of receptors in our bodies called endorphin receptors. Sorry, everyone, my back is starting to ache here. And endorphin receptors in our body, our endorphins, are chemicals we make to regulate pain. We also make endorphins that regulate the immune system. And if you can cause an endorphin surge to those endorphin receptors, they have the effect of turning down an immune system that is attacking you, leading to inflammation, or turning down autoimmune illness too. All right. So you take naltrexone, that's manufactured as a 50 milligram pill, and you have a compounding pharmacy manufacture it as low dose naltrexone, which is to start with a 1.5 milligram pill. The reason you go with a small dose, not the 50 milligram, but a 1.5 milligram pill, is that we want to provide a temporary blockade of those endorphin receptors. And when the brain senses that those endorphin receptors are blocked, it sends out a bunch of signals to the body and says, make more endorphins. And so the endorphin producing cells in the body make more endorphins. And then those endorphin receptors get flooded with all these excess endorphins as the naltrexone wears away. So you need it to wear away. If you did the 50 milligram pill that it's manufactured as, it wouldn't wear away. So you only want it to be blocked for 4 to 6 hours. That's what a 1.5 milligram pill does, okay? And so if you do this low dose naltrexone, sometimes over months, it can help lead to lower inflammation as well too. And you would start at 1.5 milligrams one time a day in the morning. After 2 weeks, you increase to 3 milligrams. And after another 3 weeks, you increase to 4.5 milligrams, okay? Let me show you some information you can take a look at about some of these recommendations too. All right. So I'm going to go to the Treat Lyme book, or okay, and I would take a look at well, I'm not finding, that's not the one I want. I have to go back and redo this one. All right, another thing you could look at for pain is take a look at my medical marijuana article. Okay, I need to get one of my articles into this chapter. Take a look at this. Look under my Herxheimer and cytokines chapter and take a look at this article called Control Cytokines. So anything here that I suggest to lower cytokines is going to lower pain, of which I talked to you about the curcumin, and I talked to you about the glutathione, okay? And then, let's see here, in terms of naltrexone, you're going to find the naltrexone in my chapter on immune regulation, or immune system. Somewhere here. Here it is. This article called On Low Dose Naltrexone on Lyme Doesn't Help, okay? Take a look at that article too. All right. Articles into my pain chapter. I don't have all the right ones in there, but read my article on low dose naltrexone. Take a look at that cytokine article. But the key herbs you would want to do start with would be the curcumin and the glutathione. Okay? All right. Oh, actually, one more thing here. So I know tonight Ross MD supplements. This is where I carry products that I use with patients at my medical practice that anyone can order from here. And all of those ones I mentioned tonight you can find here at Marty Ross MD supplements, okay? All right. So let's go back here. safe, Pamela. Good luck to you. Hi, Pam. Let's see. I've been doing laser light therapy. What are your thoughts? Seems to be working. I feel so much better. I don't know whether they're good or bad. I know that some of my patients are using them and having good results. I think it's a pretty innocuous thing to try. I don't think there's great risk in doing it. So if you happen to be getting benefits, keep doing it. All right. Thanks, Pam. All right. Well, actually, that's it for me. I'm starting. At the end of the day, my back is starting to get achy here tonight, everyone. I'm getting tired of sitting, and I think I need to get up and move. So we've just been doing this for an hour and 25 minutes. So I'm going to go ahead and call it quits for tonight. For those of you, so everyone that has participated here tonight, you signed up with your email, so you're on my email list. And so tomorrow morning, you'll get an email from me somewhere between 6 and 6:30 a.m. Seattle time. Which is Pacific Standard Time, which will have information about how to watch that recording tomorrow morning. The other thing that you'll see in that email tomorrow morning will be information about how to sign up for next week's webinar. Okay. And then in a second here, I'd appreciate, I'm going to send you back over to Treat Lyme. And I'd appreciate when you get there if you'd go ahead and look at the sign up actually for the Treat Lyme book. When you subscribe to the Treat Lyme, the way you can do that is start reading one of my articles, and it's going to say subscribe if you're not subscribed. Keep in mind that every time that you sign up for the Treat Lyme book or the Treat Lyme, that website that I have, that you're supporting these webinars as well too. And I appreciate your support. All right. So I'm going to send you over there here in just a second. And I look forward to seeing everyone next week, or actually 2 weeks from now when we do our next webinar. All right. Good night, everyone. Thanks for all your great questions tonight, too.